الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. The perfect praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, full of mercy and compassion. It is always the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and to help us in every way, to keep us on the al-sirat al-mustaqim, on the straight path that is. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. There is no God except the one Allah, alone, that is, Al-Khaliq al-Kulli Shay, the creator of everything, who is unlike anything in creation. Has no sons, no daughters, no wife. He manages or rules the heavens and the earth as Al-Malik al-Mulk, the sovereign of everything that exists in the creation. Far above anything that we could imagine or attribute to him, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says in the Al-Quran, Al-Kareem, لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد, that he doesn't procreate like human beings procreate. That he begetteth not, if they translate it. He doesn't bear children, and he never was a child. He never was a baby, and there's nothing like Allah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله and Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He is the universal messenger prophet to whom Allah revealed the Quran. And Allah, he says of him that he is rahmatan lil alameen, that he's a mercy to all the worlds. And that you will find in him an excellent example of human conduct, of human behavior. Alhamdulillah. Allah, he says in the Quran, he tells us, or reveals to us in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ وَلَا تَمُوتُونَ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. To give Allah the proper respect, the proper consideration, the proper regard, to have taqwa for Allah, to be mindful, to be appreciative, to be thankful. It means a whole lot. And then he backs it up and he says, and don't die unless you're Muslim. Don't die unless you're Muslim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We chose to talk today about generational continuity. And what we mean by that is having something that comes along behind us, keeping the chains intact, keeping something going generationally, from one generation to the next generation. Alhamdulillah. There's the Quran, it mentions in the Quran about Jacob, Yaqub, alayhi salam. Says he asked his sons, he says, what will you worship after me? And they went on to explain to him that they would be as he was, worshiping as he did, like Abraham, etc., etc. And Luqman was known to have said in the Quran, he says, whatever you do, don't associate partners with Allah, because that's the highest wrongdoing. So it's letting us know that there's an issue of continuity. Our parents, they want to make sure, the Muslim parents especially, but our parents want us to continue on in the faith that they had. And this is consistent with most every religion, most every people, to have some continuity so that they can feel comfortable, because they know that their time is coming when they'll be leaving you here. Inshallah, that it happens like that it's not the reverse. But we hope that when we leave this earth, when we transition beyond this reality, it's our hope and our prayers that our children fare better and that they maintain the integrity of this deen, this way of life. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Now I'm going to mention something else in the Quran. In Surah Ma'idah, it starts off telling us in ayat number 3 about what food is forbidden. It says the swine and the dead meat, etc., etc. But then it pivots to something, and it says, and this is one of the last things that's been reported to have been revealed to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. اليوم يئس الذين كفروا من دينكم فلا تخشوهم واخشون. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي. Says this day those who reject faith, the kafirs, they have given up of your deen. It says don't fear them. It didn't use the word, it didn't use the word taqwa here. It says don't fear. Because sometimes we fear things in the world more so than we fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, don't fear them, fear me. I'm the one you should be afraid of. Allah says that. If you really want to be afraid of me. وَرَدِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And I have preferred or chosen for you al-Islam as your deen, as your way. It didn't say, they translate the word deen as religion. But it really doesn't mean, it's not really just a set of rituals that we're doing. Deen is not a set of rituals. Deen comes from a word that also means debt. And so it's implying it's a methodology to how you repay your debt to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. this way of life, when we live it the way it's to be lived, we're repaying Allah, or we're returning to Allah the debt that we owe Allah for what? Because we happen to be sentient beings with the ability to think, reason, to comprehend. And not only that, we're beings that are able to engage the creation itself. We can engage the creation. We can engage what Allah created. Man, I'm talking about man, all of man, not just Muslims. Mankind can engage this creation and extract from it jewels to improve upon his own reality. That's a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's a debt that we owe Allah to have this ability. And so he says, I have chosen for you al-Islam as your deen. In other words, I've chosen for you the submission. You know, you can have Islam, but al-Islam means the submission. It's definite. It's not just any submission, it's the proper submission. The way to submit to Allah properly. And that is detailed to us in the Quran as revealed to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and demonstrated in his life. How to present ourselves to Allah. And so the Quran comes to ensure us generational continuity. It comes to ensure us that if we live by it and we teach our children of it, then the generations will go on and continue to go on and prosper in the context or in the way that Allah intended for them to. He says in the very same book, as we're introduced to it, you know, and I mentioned many times that even the way that the Quran is choreographed, the way it's laid out, it didn't come to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like we got it. That wasn't the first surah revealed to him wasn't Al-Fatiha. But that's how we get it. And then Al-Fatiha, right after Al-Fatiha, the Quran tells you about itself. It says, Alif Lam Mim. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, that this is that book, and that there's no doubt in it. Hudan lil muttaqin, and it is a guide. That word Hudan is guidance. And we mentioned before that guidance is paramount. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't have a light, if you don't have guidance, then it's worthless. If you can't see where you're going, if you don't know what you're doing, and you can't see where you're going, you're not going anywhere. You're walking around in the dark. You're moving around in the dark. If you come in a room and the light is off, the first thing you want to do is find the light switch. Turn the light so you can see where you're going. Because you know, if you walk, even in here, there's a big pillar right there. If you don't see that pillar, bam, you might walk right into it. So one of the main things that we want is a light. And so Allah gives us Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran, and it is a light, it's guidance for the muttaqin. Does that mean it's not guidance for everybody? No, it's just specifically saying who it's for. That if you have taqwa, the muttaqin is those who have taqwa. Those who have what we're saying, those who intend to, those who desire to, those who love to repay, those who want to repay that debt that they owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is guidance for those. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And so now this verse we're talking about, it starts out talking about food. You know, I work in the institutions, the prison. And you know, they have they have to feed you when they're in there. And one of the main things that they're concerned about is making sure you get the proper nutrition. They don't care if you get the good food or not. They just want to make sure your calorie count is where it's supposed to be. So here in this verse, it starts talking about food, what kind of food. But really, what it's actually also addressing is the spiritual food. What kind of food should you be taking in? It says, and the first one it mentions, it says dead meat. It is, swine comes later. Blood and dead meat come before that. Then it says swine. Because, I mentioned before, one thing, we really don't even want to come in no contact with swine, do we? We don't even want that in the room. If we can keep it out the room. But if a dead animal, we might not be that, concerned if a dead animal, see a dead animal in the street, or if it's you might pick it up. But you won't mind getting it up out of the way or anything. Or you see some blood, a pool of blood or something, just clean it up. But the pig, we'll have a fit. We'll lose our composure over the pig. So here's this verse, and then like I said, and then in the end of it, then it pivots and it starts telling you about this deen. And then it comes back to what it's addressing. Then it says, but if you are forced to out of necessity, go ahead. Go ahead and eat it. Take of it. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in this culture. Sometimes we're forced to take in the food that they're giving us. And I'm talking about the spiritual food they give us. I'm not talking about just the physical food. I'm talking about the spiritual food. Today is a special day in this society, And many of us, if you lived here, you're born here, you're raised here, if you come from here, if you converted here, then you have family that's Christian, don't you? Yes. And they want you to eat their food. They upset at the fact that you're not eating their food. Not their physical food. You come over and eat that all day. But you're not eating their physical food. Their spiritual food, You're not eating that. But if you're forced to out of necessity, it says go ahead. Food is representative of something that we have to have for continuity. When you're eating something, it's nourishing your body. It's making sure you can stay alive. But many times we don't take into consideration what's necessary for us to be spiritually alive. To be morally alive. Be alive ethically, etc. Many times we don't take that in. So Allah, He says about the Quran, He says, Ar-Rahmanu, Ar-Rahmanu, Allama al-Quran, khalaqa al-insan. That the beneficent Allah, the beneficent God, taught the Quran and created man. So the Quran, we said, it has come to ensure that we have the kind of continuity, proper guidance to pass on to our children. Many times we're neglectful of the fact that our children are being bombarded from all the directions that they can be bombarded from. We'll be fortunate if our kids take up where we are. If we're not careful, we'll lose them to the world. If we're not careful. The most profound generational continuity is the Quran. It is a blessing from Allah that we pass on to our children and hope that they'll be guided. If we leave it or fail to live up to it, then we have broken the continuity. And we become the weak link in the chain that breaks that continuity. It's important for us to have developed and maintain a strong connection with the revelation that has been given to us that we have in our midst like it's a novel now. But we forget, or we tend to forget, that it is guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until the end of the world. There'll never be a time, no matter how advanced man becomes, there'll never be a time when the Quran is irrelevant. Loses its luster. It might lose its luster with us because we'll be distracted by something else. Our children will play games all day, but when it comes to the Quran, it might come across to them as boring. And many times it's because we ain't excited about it either. It becomes harder. It becomes harder for us to live by it, to be guided by it in the way that we live in our life and in society. Because we're inundated with everything from every direction all the time. The main time the massages are full is on Fridays, right? They're not full the other times during the different intervals of the day. Generational continuity begins with Adam, our first father, and Ibrahim, our second father. They both represent a beginning. And they represent a connection with the natural environment as well as the ability to think and reason. And the prophets themselves, they represent a continuity. They represent a continuity of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They represent a chain, a link in a chain. That if that link wasn't as it was, we wouldn't have what we have today. Alhamdulillah. When we think about generational continuity, we're thinking about legacy, inheritance. What's coming behind us, and what we want the future to look like. That's a question that we have to ask ourselves. What do we really want the future? What do we want the future to look like? How is the future supposed to look? Who's shaping it? What forces are behind the shaping of our future right now? The next generation of our life and our existence on this earth is the akhirah. How is it that what kind of continuity are we maintaining to ensure that the life to come for us is as it should be? The only way that the life to come will be as it should be is if we keep a connection with what Allah revealed in the Quran and demonstrated in the life of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the only way that we can ensure or assure that there's a continuity existing and that will be maintained after we pass on out of this reality. That's the only way it can be done. And if we're not conditioned to think like that and to act like that, to behave like that, we'll end up in the hellfire. And that's a miserable situation to end up in if we're Muslim. There's no such thing as Muslims not going to hell. You know, the hell is going to be asked, is it full? Is there any more? The hell is big enough to put everybody in it. Finding the truth is not as difficult as living it. I'll say that again. I said finding the truth is not as difficult as living the truth. It's a much more difficult task living something than finding something. Once you found it, okay, now what are you going to do? What comes after you find it? First, when you find something, you're going to analyze it to make sure that it fits the profile, that it fits what you want it to fit. You want to find out what utility it has. How many of us feel as if though the Quran offered us any utility? How many of us really think that? Because when you're thinking about a certain thing, if you're thinking about it a certain way, you're going to utilize it in a certain way. I guess maybe say, if you're thinking about a thing in a certain way, you're going to use it in a certain way. If you're thinking about it in a certain way. If you're thinking about where's the benefit of it, where is it? what utility it has to offer, then you're going to start looking at it for that. That's what you're going to start looking at it for. Alhamdulillah, God, I mean. So finding truth is not as difficult as living it. You know, we have many people that be exposed to the Quran, they be exposed to Muslims, they come into our midst, and they be excited about what the Quran has to offer. But how convincing are we in our application of it and before them? Some people will straddle the fence for years, not knowing whether it's right or wrong. Alhamdulillah. So, generational continuity. We want to make sure, we have to be sure and certain that the people that are coming behind us stay connected to this Quran, stay connected to the Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We have to make sure that that's the reality. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulih al-Kareem. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi jam'ain. Amma ba'd ayyuhal muslimun. Although this is not the Hijra calendar, it is a calendar we live by as well. And you know, this is the last Jumu'ah of this calendar year. And as the calendar year comes to a close, time, it looks at new beginnings. The signs point at hope, prospects, and destiny. The calendar year closes with a season's greeting from the people of the book. We said at the beginning of this year, 2020 implies perfect vision. You know, when you got 2020 vision, that means you can see good. I don't have 2020 vision no more, especially when I'm trying to read something. But if you got 2020 vision, that means you can see pretty good. Now this has been a banner year. You know, this year here, boy, I'm telling you, this is one for the books. We've experienced a time in our lives this year, unlike any other time in the history of many of us. Even if you 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, 90, 100 years old, I don't think we have witnessed a time like the time we're living in right now. Events that we witnessed, especially in this pandemic, it have changed the perspective of just about everything that we do. You know, to be encouraged to, or have to wear a mask where you go. You know, to deal with something unseen. Now, just think if we approached our belief and our faith as a matter that's so dangerous, but we can't see it. Man, boy, wouldn't that have you living this thing up on the high horse, way up here? We're supposed to, we believe in Allah, do right? Without any evidence that Allah is there, right? That's how we're supposed to live this deen, as if though Allah is right here present with us, like Corona. We don't know. We hope Corona ain't in here today. But you know, when you got the indication that Corona around, whoa, boy, you put on some heavy precautions, don't you? Let Corona manifest him or herself. I don't know if it's a male or female, but whatever it is, that's a bad joker. It ain't playing around. It don't care, you know, it don't care if you're black, white, Arab, Jew, Muslim, Christian. Corona don't care who you are, where you're at. If it tend to get you, it's gonna get you. It's unseen. But its unseen is not as treacherously treacherous or dangerously dangerous as the unseen force of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we incur the anger of Allah, right? Or the wrath of Allah. Now, we mentioned about Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha has in it that last verse in there. Surat al-Ladina an'amta alayhim. An'amta, an'amta is the word, the surah. An'am. It comes from the same word. Cows. Cattle. An'amta alayhim. Be like cattle, just go in, cattle, they just casually going, cooling out, walking around, they ain't excited about nothing. You just corral them, they go just all up, you can take them right on in there wherever they want to go. They're not doing nothing, they're not excited about nothing, they're not doing anything. So, but we ask Allah to not let us be on the path of those who just casually going around not doing nothing. I'm not going to put a whole lot of emphasis on that. I didn't intend to go there with that. But we ask Allah that 7 times a day, seven often repeated verses of the Quran we ask Allah to do for us 17 times a day. I believe it's 17 rak'ah we make throughout the course of the day. And we keep asking Allah, I mentioned before, we keep asking Allah all these things. But do we really, when I hear Imam Luqman, Imam Luqman is a scholar. When I hear him recite the Quran and he starts crying, I realize that he really knows what he's saying. When you read the Quran and a tear comes in your eye, sometimes you have to stop and put it down. When you realize what's being revealed to you, what Allah is saying, sometimes you just, I'm serious. It'll make you, it'll bring you to your knees. You'll be saying, oh Allah, yeah Allah, if you knew what you were saying. So when you recite Al-Fatiha all the time, if I were you, all of us, I would do an in-depth study of every word in that surah. So I understood when it was being recited, so I knew everything that it was saying in detail, what it meant. Especially if I'm not an Arabic-speaking person, which I'm not. When I read the Quran, I go actually study that. I really do some studying. I'm not Arabic. Arabic is not my mother tongue. I'm forced to go and look, what does this really mean? What more does this mean? Because Allah asks of us not only to recite it, to ponder on it, to think on it. Well, dhikr Allahu Akbar. We're supposed to think on this here. That's why you're a sentient being, because you can think. And if you want to make sure your children can think, they better be thinking on Allah. You better make sure that they're thinking on Allah, you thinking on Allah, and that you ensure that they do. So we said 2020 implies perfect vision. We need to have our vision perfected. Allah, He also said, He said that every soul will taste death. Taste it. Allah created and blessed the human being to be intelligently progressive and futuristic. While we understand that life on this earth is limited, the spirit of life never goes away, because it is the spirit of Allah that fuels the life of humanity. Taste is a sense that affords us discretion. When you taste something, you can decide whether you want to finish eating it or not. And you can, if you do consume it, you can still taste it after you consume it. So a taste of death means that death is not the end of all things. We witness the physical death every day, but we also witness a newborn every day. And in some cases, we witness rebirth in many people that we thought were hopeless and written off. And all of a sudden, we find some people turning over a new leaf in life. And we might have looked at them, this person ain't gonna never be nothing. Alhamdulillah. So, but every soul will taste death. And it is only by the grace and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have power over it. The Quran gives us power over death. If you really want to survive death, you can only survive it with the Quran. And I'll add, as demonstrated in the life of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you really want to have some generational continuity, you want to teach your children the Quran. You want to make sure that they're familiar with the Quran. You have to love it so they'll love it. You have to live it so they'll live it. They have to see it in your life to want it in theirs. So it's about legacy, inheritance. What are we going to leave? You know, one of the attributes of Allah is al-wari, the inheritance. Allah's going to inherit everything. That's why we say we belong to Allah and we return to Allah. Allah owns everything already. So Allah is going to inherit all this. But we want to leave something for the people that, especially our children that come behind us, we want to leave something for them. We want to make sure that it's easier for them than it was for us. Isn't that the hope of every parent? That their children don't have it as hard. Sometimes I don't know if that's a good thing sometimes. Well, because my kids, they be like, I tell them, I say, you don't know what it is to be hungry. You ain't never been hungry. I'm hungry. You ain't never been hungry in your life. But I try to make sure my children don't never have to experience what we came up through. If you only knew. In the 60s, I don't even know how America got through the 60s when I think about that time. I've been around a long time. I was a boy in the 60s. That was a time when racism was just rampant. They kill you and wouldn't nothing happen. You think now that they got some body cameras and folks is going marching talking about whatever they're talking about now. Back then it wasn't even, they didn't have no body cameras. They'd kill you in the streets and you'd be in the streets. That's how it was in the 60s. I was a boy in the 60s, and the only reason I'm standing here today, the police came on our street. My mom said, run over to your, my grandmother used to live right behind us, a few houses down. She said, run over to your mama's house. And so I was 6. I was 6 years old. So I'm running down there and the police came out. He saw me running. He pulled out his gun. He was getting ready to shoot me in the back. And the only reason he didn't, because there was a man next door to us. His name was Mr. Morris. He's dead now. He said, don't you shoot that boy. That's the only reason that the police didn't shoot me. And all I was doing was running over to my grandmother's house. So that's how the times was back then. So many of our kids, we don't want them to experience stuff like that. The only way that we can assure that they don't have to experience nothing like that is that we have to live beyond that situation. We have to produce something that makes that eradicates all of that. And if we're not about the business of doing that, we're in the wrong place. We should always be doing something that is a testament to what we have in the Quran as revealed to Muhammad. We should have, what we should be doing is something that bears witness to the revelation that we have from Allah, that solidifies, that makes strong the foundation of the life that we live in. The Muslim life that we live in, no matter whether we're in America, whether we're in Russia, whether we're in Jerusalem, no matter where we are in the world, we should be formidable, we should be on top, we should be better off, we should be doing more than anyone else is doing. If we have the guidance of Allah, how can you fail? How can you be second class? How can you be misstepping? How can you be in poverty? How can we allow our brothers and sisters to be in poverty? We should take care of our own business so we can take care of the Christians' business and the Jews' business, so we can help them to establish a better life. We should show them what it is, like Muhammad showed them what it was. They couldn't even deal with that. To this day, they have given up on your deen. That's what it said. We said that earlier. They gave all. We can't. This man got it. And in that little bitty period of 10 years or so, a decade. Now we know it took 23 years for the Quran to be revealed. But when they were in Medina, that was like 10 years. 11 years, what? Just a short period of time, and revolutionized the whole peninsula of Arabia. Now, do you think that with all the technology and with all the resources we have at our disposal today, that we're not able to do that? All the vast wealth. I heard that Turkey just found 99 tons of gold in Antarul's grave. They just found it. I mean, I wish I could stumble upon 99 tons of gold someplace. I dig a hole in my backyard, clink, clink, and it's nice. I mean, can you imagine that? The whole Arabian Peninsula, rich in oil, all that stuff under the ground, all those resources under there, and much of it in the control of Muslims. But yet, look at the state of the Muslims internationally. I mentioned that the Muslims in this city, just this city, wealthy. When I was a boy, this was the only masjid in the city. Now it's 8 or 9 of them. I went into one of them. I thought I was in Jannah when I went in there. I'm serious. I went in. I couldn't believe my eyes. The kind of wealth we have put into a structure, but we won't put that kind of wealth into ourselves and our children. Yes. What kind of continuity is that? Somebody mess around and take that from us. If we're not more concerned about each and every one of us as we are the structure that we're in, we have missed the mark. What are our children going to inherit from us? In the Quran, you should have read Surah. I'm jumping around here today, but I'm going to be closing here in a second. In Surah Al-Kahf, that you read every Friday, you read that every Friday. And then that there's a point in there where Musa, alayhi salam, is being taught or tutored by Allah calls him in the Quran a servant of Allah, called him Abdullah. They call him Khadir. And he gets to a point where he goes in a place and he asks some folks to show him some hospitality. They don't want to do it, but he puts this wall back up. And this was the final straw that broke the camel's back. And so Moses said to him, he said, you could have got some money for what you did there, basically, paraphrasing. You could have got some money. And he said, you know what, I'm through with you. And that's enough. And then he went on to explain to him what he was doing. And he said the wall was owned by, it was some orphan's wall. And it had a treasure under it. And so he propped the wall back up to make sure that they could get that inheritance when the time came. Yes. He was concerned about the continuity of those orphans that was coming. Now we don't read that like I'm going to sit down and ponder over that when I tell you stuff like that. I know that, but you can see the connection there. There's always a point there where we want to stay connected. We want our children, we want the people that come behind us to be connected with what they have coming. And we should ensure that they have this Quran, that we have the life of Muhammad Rasulullah as demonstrated in his life and ours. His life and ours to inherit from us. I hope I'm making sense. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We pray that Allah guide us and help us in every way that we can be helped. That we overcome this pandemic. That Allah help us to find a light, a way out of it. That He bless the Muslims all over the world and the people all over the world. All of us. That we do everything that we can to assure that what we have today grows into something better, bigger and better for us and our children. That our parents, that we are role models, that we are individuals who Allah accepts our prayers for our parents that have gone before us. And that our children, that they have the mind to pray for us after we're gone. Alhamdulillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Amma sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Wa barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Fil alamin. Innaka hamidun majid. Ameen. Alhamdulillah. Can we have you come up, please?
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Do a mallet. Here you go, brother. You go from here. You got two of them down here for you.
Yeah.
Brother Yusuf, see y'all go. Yep.
It just don't want me to get that, do it? Sorry about that.
Allahu Akbar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح ما زكاها وكذب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها وقال لهم رسول الله نكة الله وخفياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يعدو اليتيم ولا يهون ولا طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويأمرون الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum. In the hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was quoted by Abu Hurairah as saying, "He who builds a masjid in this dunya for him, if Allah's pleasure, Allah will build for him a mansion in paradise." So I want you to understand that when you give to the programs of this masjid, you're helping build the masjid for the future, for the children, like the brother was speaking about. Because these programs that we got, Sunday we took them to the zoo. We took a lot of these kids around here to the zoo. And a lot of these kids have now taken Shahada and show up for prayer and things like this. And a lot of the elderly people too that participate in these programs that we have at this masjid. The food pantry program, the youth development program, the after school program that we have. All of the things that we are starting to do with this masjid. When you give for the masjid, you are building a masjid in this dunya for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. So please continue to donate to the masjid, donate to the Tarbiyat Halak Ministry Foundation, because we're trying to make a change around this neighborhood that desperately needed, and in the lives of a lot of people that, in other words, will not have things that other people might have. We gave away 210 turkeys during this month, and that's with the kits and everything to cook everything they needed for a meal. It was not specifically for the holiday, but a lot of people that didn't have. they was able to come to this masjid. They're getting to the point where they can count on this masjid around this neighborhood to come get everything they need, from clothes, food, hygiene products, toiletries, you name it, as well as Islamic education. And they're most definitely coming here for that. So I just wanted to remind you, the sister is sitting over there for the POS systems, for the box. We take checks, brothers, the online class for the Imam, so we can continue to, you know, the continent, what you say, brother, for the online classes, for the brother online classes. And, you know, to the Masjid, the Zakat. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, in this ayah, he told him, he said, teach them to give from out of what they love, that they might purify themselves. So we got all these kids here, so these kids get a chance to not only see their parents dropping money in boxes and swiping these cards, but teach these kids what you're doing, that you're building a masjid for the future. All right? So all praise and thanks to Allah.
Now, him having said all that, so, you know, some people don't want to invest in this neighborhood. You know, I got wind of some people don't want to invest because it's, you know, black people live around here and crime around here. But there's no place where Islam has gone where it hasn't changed the area that it went into, especially if we do our job. You know, yeah, this is you know, this used to be Polish village back in the day. You know, when I was a boy, it was mostly Polish people that lived over here. But now that there's, you know, a lot of people, poorer people who live, I won't call them they're not just because they're black, it's Mexicans live over here too. Yeah. And so sometimes it doesn't seem like it's worth the investment to spend or to invest here. You know, and you know, I've been around here, you know, I've been in this masjid, not this particular one, but in this organization as a masjid for 40 years now. I've been around a long time. I don't look that old, thank you. And but I've been around a long time. I've seen the Muslim community transit through every transition that has happened here. You know, and all of the imams in the city get paid. I'm one of the few that don't. You know, I don't get a salary. You know, and I didn't be, you know, I'm imam by default. I just happened to, you know, I came from the streets. Just brother Abdul-Rahim nominated me 25 years ago. And that's how this ain't something I wanted to do. I was a construction contractor. You know, I was doing something I really loved to do before I got into this work. And so, you know, I would like to of course be compensated. But I figure, you know, if Allah compensate me, that's enough. But for the masjid itself, when I ask for something, or when we ask for something, it is for the structure and it's for what we're trying to do here. It's not for any individual. You know, none of us get a salary. None of us make any money. You know. And like I said, for the Muslim community to be as wealthy as it is in here, to build $1 million structures and all that, you know, we shouldn't be in the situation we're in. But you know, I can't go out and beg people for stuff. I won't do it. You know, somebody else might do it or might ask. I only ask once, you know, twice. I might ask a couple times, you know. You know, just like we sent out email and letters to everybody about, you know, the year-end fundraiser. And we haven't got 1 cent yet, and it's almost the end of the year. But, you know, Allah has always helped us. I'm confident that Allah is going to be with us. And so no matter what everybody else do, we still going to do what we have to do for this deen. So we thank you. And then, you know, of course, Happy New Year. The next Friday is January the 1st of 2021. Imam Lukman is going to be the khatib that day. So you won't see me again for another month. I know you probably I know y'all don't think like this. But anyway, thank you again. Assalamu alaikum.